problem. But what I'm saying to you here is, taking a step back and asking the original question. I can cite you no less than 3 or 4 different places in the Quran and Sunnah, or 5 or 6, a handful, a dozen of places, where it explicitly mentions that being offensive to someone based on race is something from Jahiliyyah, or what you would call pre-Islamic ignorance.
Maybe that's because it's a problem that the Muslims suffered from and the Jews didn't.
No, hold on. Please. I'm just saying, pre-Islamic ignorance, right? So here, I think racism is racism is something which is universal.
Okay,
yeah?
So how do you explain to me? Because you said that,
so I just want to know. I was just wondering.
Okay, so you said that Islam's opposed to. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert in Islam, so maybe I'm.
No problem. We can correct each other. Okay. That's the whole process of learning.
So, as I understand it, in Islamic jurisprudence, a non-Muslim is not able to give evidence in a court against a Muslim. Is that correct?
So here, before we move on to the distinctions between Muslims and non-Muslims, the premise I've put forward is that races are all equal. Okay. Like one individual race, one person of one individual race is not higher or lower than another person of any individual race. Okay. So me as an Egyptian, for instance, and by the way, I've done this ancestry test. Okay. You know the thing where you go and I had 5%. I had 5% Jewish. I had 5%.
That's why you're so smart.
But I also had, I had a good mix. I had like almost 20% West African. And these things. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, having said this, having said this, right? I was gonna say to you that actually I think it was 24%, or I can't remember what it was, but not of Jewish, of the West African and African, some sorts of African. What I was gonna say was that here, if you agree that discriminating on someone based on their race, or treating someone differently, or thinking that you're better than them because they're from a different country of origin, which was the result of the accident of birth, that's a bad thing and it ought to be challenged. And my question is, if that's the premise, if we both agree on that same premise, because you can say, well, I don't agree with that premise, and it's in your right to say that, and you can corner me by saying, prove it objectively outside of a religious framework, which will be difficult. Okay. However, I agree with that premise. If you agree with that same premise, then I would say to you, listen, the Quran and the Sunnah are very clear that there's no superiority of a black person over a white person, or an Arab over a non-Arab. And the Prophet challenged directly people that were anti-Jew. Did you know that? For example, Hafsa, who was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the Prophet Muhammad married a Jew, he married a Jew called Safiya bint Hyde. He married. Anyway, he married Safiya bint Hyde.
This is the one after he executed her husband.
When he married Safiya bint Hyde,
this is the one after he executed.
He didn't execute anyone. Her husband was killed. But hold on. Let's not get into tangents. I'm making a point.
Actually, someone just showed us a really good point.
No problem.
Who was Moses' wife?
We got an example of
let me just finish.
Hold on. Moses' wife was a black woman.
No issues. No, and we believe Moses was black, so that makes it even better. And there's no problem. Anyways,
who's we? The Muslims.
Yeah, Muslims believe he was
Muslims
black.
believe
Moses was black. Yeah, dark skin black. Not like white like you, no way.
No, Mr. Speaker.
No prophet was like your color in the Middle East.
So was Ishmael?
David.
No. Was Muhammad?
1 minute, because they are two, we are two. You have to know, but at the time, just Moses coming, and Jesus coming, and slave is not black. At the time, slave is discrimination to sell people. Doesn't matter white or black or nothing to do with it.
Okay, thank you. So let me just. So when Hafsa said something about Safiya, he said to her, she said to her, oh, you're Jewish. You are the son. You're the daughter of a Jewish person. So the Prophet, he corrected Hafsa, and he corrected this what you would call the modern anti-Semitism. And he said, actually, you are the daughter of a prophet, and you are tahta nabi. You are also under the a prophet.
Tahta is under.
Yes, tahta. Yeah. So you're married to a prophet, and you're the daughter of a prophet. Like going back to Harun. The same thing with Bilal ibn Rabah, who was a black man, who was attacked by Abu Dhal al-Ghafari, who was an Arab, who
So
said
is this is the Quran or from
this
the
is hadith. So we believe in the hadith and the Quran, both of those corpuses. So when he was attacked by him, Abu Dhal al-Ghafari was attacked him and said, "You're a son of a black woman." The Prophet was very angry with him and he corrected him and said, "This is from the Jahiliyyah of the pre-Islamic Arabs." And now, so he corrected the racism. So not only, and the Quran says, "Inna akramakum 'inda Allahi atqakum," and that's certainly Allah is. And the Quran says, he says that he talked about the different colors of the creations. So min al-nasi wad-dawabi wal-an'ami mukhtalifun alwanuhu kadhalik. That from the different people as well, you have different colors. إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. That certainly the ones who have piety of Allah, they're the ones who fear God, and they're the ones who know. So in other words, there's enough in the Islamic corpus, in the Quran, the Sunnah, to show that racism, or the idea of thinking yourself superior over another race, is an abhorrent, ignorant, pre-Islamic idea. Now I'm just asking, is there an equivalent in the Old Testament like that?
Yes. Numbers 12. Can I read this for you?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Numbers 12. Miriam and Aaron, Moses' brother, opposed Moses over him marrying a Cushite. A Cushite is a black person. It's in the Torah.
Yeah, from Cush.
Yeah, Cush.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a proof for you.
No,
Miriam was banished for 7 days for being racist, basically.
Okay, no, but here, this is talking about marriage, yeah? So all we can extrapolate from this is that as a Jew, you're allowed to marry a Cushite. And by the way, a lot of Cushites are Jews anyways. No?
No.
In
this case, she wasn't a Jew. She wasn't a Jew.
Okay, anyway, what this shows is you can marry a Cushite, and in the same book, Numbers,
they discriminate against her for not being a Jew and for being a Cushite, a black woman.
Okay, so where does it say, don't talk about her being a black woman?
Listen.
That's what
where does it say? Can you read it?
Look. He married a Cushite.
No, let me read it. Sorry.
Okay.
Let me read it out.
Sorry.
So it says here, Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his... Hold on. Let me read it.
So you're looking for something explicit, but
Is Aaron the prophet here, yeah?
Aaron is the prophet.
No problem. And you believe he was a prophet as well?
yeah.
Okay, no issues. Can I just read it out? Because he made a point.
because I just want to make a point before you read it out.
No, hold on.
You're telling us,
Yes.
Something
You're basically building a straw man, Muhammad.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying something as explicit
We're
as
telling you
possible.
what a mainstream Jewish belief is. I'm not saying there aren't Jewish racists.
Judaism
Of course,
views-
there are some Muslim racists as well, I'm sure.
I'm not talking about
views-
Muslim races. I know they exist.
Judaism
I'm
views-
talking about Judaism.
Yeah, so we're talking about the religion.
Judaism
Yes,
views
the
the
religion.
world as tribes in this period, and the Cushites were a tribe. The Israelites were a tribe, but they were made up of 12 tribes within that.
Yes.
And so one of the characteristics, racial characteristics, so to speak, of the Cushites were they were black. And so that Judaism doesn't see colour. This is why it's so frustrating when I argue with black Hebrews or black Israelites. It's because
explain to him there is nothing called Judaism. Judaism has been invaded by Golda Meir. We call them al-Yahudiyya, Deen al-Yahudi.
was actually Golda Meir that wrote the
even
Torah.
exists by Golda Meir. She make it like we have IC, we have the shit now, we have the bullshit now. Same. He's been make it by Golda Meir. Nothing called in the Torah.
And you know that
nothing called Judaism. That is not exist. Al-Yahudiyya. Jewish Yahudiyya. Judaism, nothing to do at all in the Torah, in the book of Torah. Explain to you. Open the Torah and you order. Judaism is only being done by Golda Meir, being done by the bank internationals, or people, the riches, they want to make money after he had a religion. Thank you. And the end, he is Jewish. I can talk to him. I believe in not Jewish. I really doesn't matter. I even put that and I really don't believe it. And the end, who's the father? Is Abraham. Al-Khalil. Who's the cousin? Ishaq and Ismail. They see the Jewish, they're still cousins to us. They're lovely people. Thank you.